In this video, I will show you how you can use Jupyter Notebooks, Python, Pandas to load, analyze, and modify your Amazon advertising bike sheets. Let's go. Hi, my name is Trutz. I'm the founder and CEO of Amalytics. We are an Amazon monitoring tool, and I'm also a little bit of a data nerd, and I'm often using Jupyter Notebooks for all kinds of tasks. And today I would like to show you how you can use Jupyter Notebooks, so basically Python and the Pandas library, to work with Amazon advertising bike sheets. And this is a 3-part series here. So in the first part, in this part, we will basically only just load the data so we can work with it. In the second part, we will analyze it. And in the last part, I will show you how you can modify your bike sheet and re-upload it to also modify and improve your campaigns on Amazon. So let's dive right in. But let's start first with why work with advertising bike sheets anyways. I think advertising bike sheets are often overlooked, but it's a really great resource because they contain the complete campaign structure. Everything you can set up in your advertising console, you will find it in those bike sheets. They are basically big Excel file, and we'll look at them in a minute. But they not only include your complete campaign structure, they also include performance metrics and even search term data. So basically everything you need to analyze your current campaign situation. And this is really handy, and it makes your job analyzing your campaigns much easier. For example, comparing to go into the advertising console. For example, if you want to see their all search term data, you need to go into each campaign, each ad group, look at the search terms, analyze them or whatsoever. And they're easy to get, and that's great. I will show you where to find them. You can just make a few settings, you download them, and you're ready to go. So it's a really great resource. And what I will show you, of course, you can do everything in Excel here, but especially if you're doing repetitive tasks. So if you're analyzing those on a regular basis, I think it's great to leverage Jupyter Notebooks and especially the Pandas library here, because it's basically what you can do here is I often describe it as Excel as code. So you can, everything what you would do in Excel, you describe it once here, and then you can just run it within seconds. And especially if you do the same job often, then it's really a big time saver. And of course, Python offers lots of great libraries you can use and leverage. And as I said, great for repetitive tasks, and you can customize it totally to your needs, and it totally runs in your browser. You don't need anything. Perhaps we will come later here that you of course need Jupyter Notebooks, and probably you need something what we would often call as Anaconda. It's a great library where you can install Python and all the rest you need Jupyter Notebooks on your laptop. Or what you also can do is you can run it in Google Colab, which is an offering of Jupyter Notebook from Google. And then you just need your browser basically. Also what you need is a little bit of knowledge in this, how to use Jupyter Notebook, to work with Python, how to program in Python. This is not a beginner course. I won't tell you how to install Anaconda. I won't tell you how to work with Python. So if you're fairly new to that, I would recommend that you refer to the many great tutorials out there on YouTube to get your feedback. I will just focus on the business logic we will use here to analyze Amazon advertising bike sheets. And of course, it's helpful that you have some advertising knowledge, that you can ask the right questions to analyze, for example, your bike sheets. Okay, let's try and go to the next point, and let's see how we can create and download those bike sheet. And I've already linked the relevant part here, but let me show you where to find those in your advertising console. I'm right here in the advertising console, and you can go here on the left side to the sponsored ads link, and here's what they call bike operations. And if you click this link, you directly land on this page where you can create and download and also upload your bike operations or your bike sheets. But if you're here and you don't see this page in English, I would definitely recommend to switch your language to English here, for example, because the bike sheets are localized. So if you download them in German, you will get a German bike sheet, which means all the headers are in German, some values are in German, and depending on your language, every bike sheet will look a little bit different. And if we create our script, and you will see this later, we will assume that certain columns have certain names. So I totally recommend to work with English bike sheets to always have the same naming convention in here. And then what you then should do is you can select your date range here. I would suggest that you look at, depends of course totally on how much data you want to analyze, but let's say I would recommend to create the last 30 or even last 60 days. The longer the date range, the more data you will get. And here you can select what should be included. And I would recommend that you also select terminated campaigns, also select campaigns with 0 impressions. We don't need placement data for now, and we also don't need brand assets data, but we totally want to have sponsored products data, sponsored brands data. And for sponsored brands, you see here that they have split them in 2 sections here, sponsored brands data. And that's probably the old world. And now sponsored brands can have multiple ad groups. And this is this here. We also, of course, want to have sponsored display data. We don't need any guidance, but we do want to get the sponsored product search term data as well as the sponsored brand search term data. And then just click create spreadsheet for download here. And then you will see that it takes approximately 15 minutes to create your file. So you want to check in regularly until it's created. Once it's done, it says download here, and then you can download this file and analyze it. And this is what I have already done. So let's open Excel here to quickly look at it, because what you get here is an Excel sheet basically. And this Excel sheet has multiple tabs. You can see your portfolio, sponsored products, everything we just selected is now in here. Sponsored products. We have 2 tabs for sponsored brands. We have sponsored display campaigns and also the search term reports here. And this is really great. And of course, now I could go in here and filter. For example, if I want to see all my campaigns, I would go to the entity column here and filter, for example, just to all campaigns. And I would see all my campaign data here. And what I already mentioned is that we not only have this structure, so we see the campaign name, for example, we can also see start and end dates, targeting types, if it's enabled or archived. We can see our budget here, and there's lots of information, our bidding strategy for each campaign. And here on the very right, we also have the performance metrics. And this is really great for analyzing campaigns. And we have this for all what they call here entities. So campaign is an entity. Another entity would be ad groups. And for each entity, different columns are filled here. For example, on an ad group level, we would also have, for example, of course, the ad group state, but also, for example, things like the default bid. This is not defined on campaign level, but only on ad group level. So different columns are only filled for different entities. So bike sheets are a little bit daunting at first, but once you have understood how they're created, it's really great to work with. So here you can see for each campaign, you have your bidding adjustments, your ad groups, your product ads, your negative keywords, and everything else. So this is really great, but they're also quite big. And this is where those Jupyter notebooks come in handy to help us work with those big bike sheets. So let's go back to our script. And let's assume now we have downloaded one of those bike sheets. I've done it and put it here into our folder here. I've downloaded basically 2, one German one, so we can see how this is different from the English one, and one English bike sheet. And basically, as you can see, though, just Excel files here. So let's take a first quick look at the data here and import the English bike sheet. So I added the name of the bike sheet right as it comes out of Amazon. Nothing changed here. And of course, we need to import our pandas library here. And let's just take a very quick look at, for example, the first spreadsheet here, the sponsored products campaigns. And this is the name of this spreadsheet here. So exactly this here. And as I mentioned, you can see those are English names here, English column names, English values. And this becomes important right in a minute. So let's take a look. First, we will load it here, and then we will just display a single data frame. We can just ignore the warning here. Later, we will hide those warnings. So this is how it looks like. So basically, very much the same what we just saw in our Excel sheet here. We have the product column, the entity column, and the campaign IDs. We don't need those IDs now, but we will need them later when we upload bike sheets to modify them, and everything else. So quite a lot. And this is just an excerpt. You can see those 3 dots here. So they just show us some columns here. It's the first columns and the last one. So we also see the performance metrics here. And let's look at the column names. So if you do print D of English columns, you can see all the column names here. And those are exactly the same column names we have seen here. And those column names are sometimes quite long and include special characters like brackets here. And this is sometimes a bit tricky to work with. But as you can see here, those are all English column names. And now let's look quickly, just for a short time, at a German bike sheet here, just so you can see the difference here. And you can also see the name of the sheet name has already changed now. It's a German name here. And if you look here now at the column names, they are German as well. Not only campaign name anymore, but it's Kampagnenname. Or for example, all the entity values here are also German. It's Kampagne and not campaign anymore. And this makes it tricky, of course. So this is why I would definitely recommend to work with English bike sheets only, so you know what to expect. And there's one other thing, what we will do here. We will use a nice library from the Skimpy package, which is called Clean Columns. And what it does is, it changes the column names. So probably let's look at our English column names again. As you can see them, some are quite easy like product, but some are also very long like reason for ineligibility information. And they include also brackets and other special characters sometimes. And Amazon sometimes in the past has changed those column names. And for example, also the uppercase, lowercase, those ROAS thing was named differently some time ago. And for example, the O was small. And in programming, uppercase and lowercase letters totally matter. So this is why we want to harmonize this a little bit. And this is where this clean columns things comes in. And what it does is, let me show you, we will now run this clean columns on our data frame here. And it does two things. It first makes everything lowercase and it removes special characters like the brackets. For example, this one here, at group default bit informational only, is now totally lowercase and it's separated by underscores and those brackets are gone. And this is really helpful. So in case Amazon decides to change, for example, here the uppercase, lowercase thing, this here will make our script more robust because we don't depend on uppercase, lowercase letters. And it's also a little bit more easy to work with. So that's great. And if you haven't installed this library, you might need to reinstall it first. So just uncomment this command, install the Skimpy package, and then you should be ready to go. This is for just some information. I would say let's get started and load our data. And first thing first is we will of course import some of the typical libraries to work with. And just for your information here, I'm running Pandas version 2.1.4 and I'm running on Python 3.11.7. So if you watched this video some years ago and things have stopped working due to major upgrades of those libraries, you know what libraries to install to make this work again. And one other comment before we start, I'm trying to make this script as robust as possible because what you have seen here first is that each bulk sheet can be a little bit different depending on what you have selected here. So some bulk sheets might contain sponsored products data, some do not. And we try to be very flexible here so that the script tries to understand what is there and what it can do and what it can't do basically. Because if there's no sponsored products data or if there's no sponsored search term data, then we don't want to do certain analysis because if we would do them, then of course the script would break if the data is not available. So we try to be very flexible here. And I learned this the hard way. I hard coded everything right in the beginning and then I worked with different bulk sheets and the script started to break. I had to comment out certain codes and this makes it very flexible. And we try to be very specific here. So this is why we are going to define lots of variables in the beginning. We will then use later in our code. So for example, we are defining here the name of the portfolios sheet, or we are defining the sheet name of the sponsored products campaigns. Because if Amazon decides to change the structure of their bulk sheets, we can simply change them here once and the rest of our codes only works with a variable and not hard-coded with any strings. And we also do this for our column names here. Because, for example, if you are using the campaign name, for example, in your code later and you are hard-coding those strings, and if those strings later change because Amazon decided to change the column name, then it's really a pain in the ass to find all the places where you have used it and change it. So we will define it here once and later in our code, we will work only just with the variable name and not with a hard-coded string. This is why you see lots of variables here right in the beginning. And what you can do, of course, is if you would like to work with French column names, then you just change everything here to French and then this rest of the script should work because it's working with the variable names and not with the hard-coded strings anymore. So you can also use this here to localize the script to your needs, but still I would recommend to work with English column names. And we not only do this for column names, so the small c indicates that this should be a column name. We also do this, for example, with the values here. So the small v indicates a value. And what do I mean with values? This is what I've shown you here, for example, in those columns where there are some strings. Those are the values here like campaign, bidding adjustment, ad group, etc. And this is what we have defined here. So that we just same thing here. If we want to filter by the product targeting entity, I would just use this variable here and not the hard-coded string. So same logic here. And this makes it a lot easier to maintain this script later on. So I would definitely recommend to do that. Yeah, we have already loaded our libraries. So let's also load our variables here. Just Shift Enter runs the cell and you can see it has now been loaded. And let's just load the bulk sheet here and print out the sheet names. This is what you can see here. And those are the strings we have defined already here. So we expect to see sheet name, for example, like sponsored brand search term report. And I think we have defined that already here, the sponsored brand search term report. And now we look inside the sheet here and check what kind of data we find here. So sheet names now contains all our sheets here, and we check, do we find our sponsor product sheet in this array here? And if yes, let's set this variable here to true. So we know that we found sponsor product data. Same with sponsor brands and same with sponsor display. Sponsor brands here, as I told you, we have two sheets in our Excel sheet, one for the old world, sponsor brand campaigns without any ad groups, and one for the new world, sponsored brands campaign with multiple ad groups. So, and as you can see, it found everything. We have sponsored product data, we have sponsored brand data, we have sponsored display data, and later we can refer to this variable to check, do we have this data? Can we do some analysis with it? And if not, we just skip the code and the script just moves on and we don't throw any error here. So let's start with loading our sponsored products data. And here we already make use of this new variable. So we know we have this data. So this code block should execute here. And what we do here is first we load this data in our data frame, and I've called this data frame DF, like data frame, SP for sponsored products. And here we also refer to our sheet name, which has been defined before. And we also do some conversions here. For example, we take some ID columns here and convert them to a string. This makes it a little bit easier later to work with them. As you've seen, those are often numbers, but we don't do any math with those numbers. So we convert them to strings right away. And we do this clean columns thing here. I showed you this before, which makes every columns lowercase. And so we know that we can work with this data here and not with the original column name. Next is we do some more conversions here. For example, the keyword text column is converted to a string as well. We fill everything which is not filled with the string called NA. And now we check, because what could happen is that we do find the sponsor product sheet, but it might be that it does not contain any data. So if this happens, so if our sheet has been loaded but is empty, we again set our variable to false, because then if we have a sheet but it's empty, we can't do anything else. If we, however, find some data, we populate a new variable, which is called list of campaign sheets. I explain later why we do this, because later I want to have all campaigns from all ad types in one data frame to do cross-type analysis. So I append already my new data frame here to this array here. And then we do the same basically with our search term data. And I'm calling this data frame df sponsor product st for search term data. Same thing here. Also some cleaning going on, some conversions. And then we have to check, do we have a bike sheet from a seller or from a vendor? Because those bike sheets are a little bit different, especially when it comes to the products column or the product ads columns. For sellers, we will find an SKU here, and for vendors, we will find only the ASIN here. And this is why we now look inside our bike sheet and try to understand if this bike sheet comes from a seller or from a vendor. And what we do here is we check our columns again and check how many ASINs do we find and how many SKUs do we find. And if the number of SKUs is greater than the number of ASINs, we know that this bike sheet comes from a seller, and we set is seller to true. It would be false if it's a vendor. And we set our product column to what we have defined as a column from SKU. If it would be a vendor, there wouldn't be any SKU column. So we set our product column to the ASIN column. So let's run this code quickly and see if we have a seller or if we have a vendor column here. Takes a couple of seconds and then we should be ready to go. It's now loading all the sponsored products data, and it found an SKU column here. So this bike sheet comes from a seller account, which is correct. So the variable has been set to true. And this becomes interesting later if we are analyzing, for example, our performance on product level. So now we do the same thing here with sponsor brands. However, we have two sheets we need to load, once for the sponsor brands without ad groups and once for with ad groups. And of course, we also have the search term data, and we basically do the same thing here. So let's do this, load all the sponsored brands data. And again, if there wouldn't be any sponsor brands data, then this code would just skip it, but it still can execute and makes it very handy. So last thing, let's just load the sponsored display data. The same thing here. And what you can see here is that we are setting this column, which is called what we call targeting tape, to manual, because in sponsor products campaigns, we have two types of campaigns. We have auto campaigns, as you know, and manual campaigns. And later we want to perhaps compare how are my auto campaigns doing against my manual campaigns. And for that, we need to set this column here manually for sponsored display, but also for sponsored brands, because in sponsored brands and sponsored display, as of now, 2024, there are no auto campaigns for those campaign types. So we set this manually here to manual because this is not filled. I'm referring here, let me quickly check if we can find it here, to this column here. Let me check if I can quickly find it. It's this column here called targeting type, and it's either set to auto or manual depending on the campaign. But we don't have this campaign set, for example, for sponsored brands campaigns or for sponsored display. Here, this column is, I think, just not available. So we set it manually. So we have this value for all our campaigns, just as a quick explanation why we do this here. And then I created a quick test here for our English column names. And it's just checking if we found those columns we expect here for sponsored products, sponsored product search, sponsored brands, sponsored display. And we just check if those columns are available. And if this code executes without any error, then we are good to go. Then we know that the bike sheet contains all the columns we are expecting further down in our code. And this makes it very handy. If it would be missing something here, so for example, let's make a quick change here. For example, if I change this now to, let's say, campaign ID with uppercase letters at the end, this test would throw an error here. And it says data frame is missing columns campaign ID. So we now know this column here is missing now. So, and this makes it very easy for you to check, okay, where do we have something which has changed? Then you can adjust your code and move on. So let's turn it back. And now our code executes just fine. So now we have loaded all the data. So let's take a quick look at it. And let's first check here our DFSP. And what you now see, we have a scrolling button, because in the beginning here, and this is quite handy, I set here in my imports, I think I set those two options here, display max columns none. So it should always show all our columns if we open up here a data frame. So now we can have the full data frame here visible, and you can see our changed column names here and everything what you would expect to see in Excel as well. And we have also set a lot of columns to NA where there's no value, for example, but we haven't made any changes yet. You can also see some values here for our performance metrics, but we haven't done anything more. So just double check on the column names. Great, that's how they expected. Let's take a little bit look at the data types here. And you see for all our strings and IDs, we have an object column here. Campaign ID is still an integer. We need to check that if this is what we would expect here or not. Important is that, for example, that all our performance metrics are basically numbers. So we can work with them and sum them, analyze them, whatever. It's either an integer or a float. That also looks quite good. So I think we can work with it. And now, of course, we can leverage the full power of the pandas library. For example, if we only want to look at our campaign data in sponsored products, we just set this filter here and say, okay, please only show me those values where the entity column contains the campaign string. And here I'm still using hard-coded strings. Later I would use the corresponding variable because I don't want to change it all the time if this would change here, for example. And now, for example, we can see all our campaigns here from this sponsored products ad type here. And this makes it already quite easy. Of course, what I can also do, I don't want to look probably at all columns here because all those IDs, for example, are not that interesting. So I can define an array of columns I'm interested in. I define this. And now, for example, if I want to look at a specific column here, this would also work. And now I can, for example, see everything of a specific campaign ID, but only show me the relevant columns and show me the first 10 results. So now I see everything related to this auto campaign here, or the bid adjustments, ad groups, product ad, etc., etc. Or if I want to check, for example, only everything from my entity keyword here for a given campaign ID, I can also set this. It's empty here. Not sure why. Probably because it's an auto campaign which doesn't have any keywords here, so that's fine as well. So I think we are now in good shape to start with the analysis, but this will be in our second part here. But I will just give you a quick outlook on what we can do now. For example, if we want to look at all our campaigns as a whole, you have seen that those are spread out across multiple sheets here. We have here our sponsored products, sponsored brands, with and without ad groups, sponsored display campaigns. So they are spread out. And basically, but if I want to take a holistic look at all my campaigns, I need to combine those sheets first. And in Excel, I would probably copy everything into one new sheet, filter here by the entity campaigns, and move everything into one sheet, put everything below each other to analyze it. And this is what we will do now here. Same thing here. So we have already added all our sheets here into this array here, which we have already populated before, I think, here, which is already here in the list of campaign sheets. And now we create an empty array here. And for example, we move now every campaign entity here. We add this to this new sheet here. And then we create a new data frame from it, which is called df all campaigns. And then we have all campaigns here in this. Let's do this and quickly run it. And you can see how quickly it goes here. Yeah? Now we have in this data frame df all campaigns, everything in here. Okay, now we are seeing a random sample of 5. Let's do this again to see if we also see something else, but not only sponsor products campaigns here. But now here, for example, we have everything. You see a sponsor display campaign, sponsor products, brand, and display again. This is just a random sample of 5 random campaigns here, but it just shows you that we now have all elements here, all rows of type entity from all ad types here in one data frame. And this is cool. And now we can do our first analysis, for example, across all campaigns, because we have not only the campaign structure here now, but also our performance metrics here, which are to the very right. We have now more columns because sponsor brands has different columns than sponsor display, but the same columns put below each other, for example. So if we want to have, for example, a simple pivot table, then we can do just that. So we group by product here. And we want to see, okay, how are my sales and my costs or my spend is doing? We just aggregate it, and we want to see total values as well. And then we will calculate also some new columns here. For example, my ACoS and my ROAS. But let's see, for example, let's do the first thing first separately and just show this pivot table here. Now you can see product is the name of the ad type. We have sponsor brand, sponsor display, sponsor products, and we have now summed up by sales and spend. Those are these 2 columns here. And we have a total column here also. And now I want to, for example, also see my ACoS or my ROAS per product type. And I just cannot now sum or based on the other campaigns or take the average of this existing column ACoS or ROAS. I need to calculate it based on those values here. So I'm doing just that here. I'm adding 2 new columns here to my data frame called ACoS and ROAS, and they're just how they are calculated: spend divided by sales or sales divided by spend. Oh, this is a typo here, should be ROAS. And let's do just that. And now we can see here how it's going. I have not much data here in sponsor display, but here my ACoS, for example, is 3%. My ROAS accordingly is almost 29. Same here, ROAS of 17% and so on. And my total ACoS here is 5%. Quite good. And now, of course, we can also use the plotting possibilities here, which Python offers. So, for example, if we want to see sales and spend by product to just visualize the data we have here, I can create a simple plot here based on sales and spend. Should be a bar plot size with some title. Let's see how it looks like. And now we can have a nice graph for each product type here. Sponsored brands, I see my revenues and my spend here, also for everything else. So quite easy, quite with a quick click on a button. Or some other example here. Now I have all campaigns here still again, and I now want to plot them. So I want to see sales and for example, what we did here, we are calculating the AC. I've taking it now by 100 to have a real percentage value here. And I'm plotting each campaign in different colors here. And for each campaign, we plot spend across ACoS. So we can see how much money do we spend and what is the ACoS behind that. And for example, if we see in this plot that we have a lot of campaigns with high spend and high ACoS, this would of course should trigger a warning in our head. There's probably some not so efficient spending here. And we do this for all our products here. But before I talk a lot, let's look at this, how it looks like. And this is how our scatter plot looks like here. Each dot is now a single campaign, and we can see the ACoS here on the x-axis and the spend here on the y. So what we want is of course high spend, low ACoS, or at least low spend with higher ACoS. But what we don't want to see is of course high spend, high ACoS. And by just looking at this scatter plot, we can quickly see how performant our campaigns are running here. So if we would have lots of dots here in the upper right corner, this should be a warning that we need, or we directly know what we should do. Let's stop the video right here. We have already covered here 36 minutes. That should be enough for the first video. Now we have the data we now can use to analyze the data. And I will link you this script here, which I created here in the description, so you can work with your data here. All you need to do is basically to change the file name here in the beginning, and it's just right here. So this is all you need to do. You need to download your bike sheet, drop it here in your local folder, or if you are working with Google Colab, then you need to upload it first, and you might want to also change the path here depending on how you set it up. But then you can just run the full script, and it's really easy. Let's do it right away. I will show you how quick everything goes if we just run it in one thing. You just go to kernel here. We say restart kernel and run all cells. Now everything is going to be resetted. And let's wait until the script has finished. You can see now it's still running. If there's an asterisk here, it says this cell, for example, is waiting for execution. Now here at the top, everything is running. You can also see here in this view here where it's just executing the code. Now it's loading the sponsor products data, and then it will load sponsor brands, sponsor display. Now it goes through one by one, takes 20 seconds. Probably, and now we are done. So, and let's assume you have created all your analysis based on the data, and you're basically done. This takes just 1 minute. Would it take hours to do the same thing in Excel? And you can run this over and over again with different bike sheets. So this is the real power here of Jupyter Notebooks, Python, and bike sheets. So let me know what we should analyze. Let me just drop it in the comments. What are you interested in? Of course, we will look at, for example, things underperforming search terms, for example. And don't forget to hit our subscribe button here so you get updated when the next video comes out. And please check out also our blog here, because we are creating some new content around that as well. How to create perfect Amazon campaign structure with Python and bike operations, for example. But there's lots of Amazon know-how which helps you to be more efficient. And also check out our tool Emalytics. This is where we have all put this in here right away. So with a single of clicks, for example, we have here what we will do now with Python here as well. We have a flop list here which directly shows you, for example, unprofitable search terms here. But I will show you how you can do this yourself using this here. So looking forward to see you in our next video, and let me know what we should look at. Looking forward to welcome you here back again.